The trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is ongoing, and the judge expects it may wrap Monday or Tuesday. It goes to jury deliberations, and who knows, by then the jury may come back with the near-instant verdict of not guilty. Now, of course, Kyle Rittenhouse still faces a misdemeanor gun charge. The curfew charge was dismissed, and it seems like he's going to get convicted on the misdemeanor gun charge. There's some legal questions about that we can get into, but for now, the big and most important news. Chicago PD cancels officers' days off in preparation for civil unrest over Kyle Rittenhouse trial as America braces for an acquittal. It's not just you or I and more savvy politicos who are aware that an acquittal is very likely and probably coming soon. Even leftists are starting to wake up to realize Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense. We have the famous clip from Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks who said, "I was wrong." She had initially claimed that Rosenbaum, one of Kyle Rittenhouse's attackers, was being chased by Rittenhouse, when in fact we know from the trial the inverse is true. Kyle Rittenhouse was being chased by Rosenbaum. In fact, if you're a follower of my work and Timcast IRL, you've seen the video going back since the night in question. Chris Hayes of MSNBC says in a monologue he will likely be acquitted. And now we're seeing tweets go viral. One in which an individual says, "My progressive bubble had me believe this was something that it wasn't." One individual saying they didn't know that the people who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse were in fact white people. Because the progressive narrative, even from Joe Biden, well, actually, I should say allegedly from Joe Biden. I haven't actually checked into that tweet. But there have been statements from several high-profile individuals and Democrats, for instance, Ayanna Pressley, that Kyle Rittenhouse was a white supremacist who went to hunt down Black Lives Matter. A lie. The prosecution is going down in flames. It is abhorrent. It is what this prosecutor is doing, I will say, is outright evil. A new witness today. Drew Hernandez, we've had him on Timcast IRL on more than one occasion, a direct witness who filmed what happened that night. And the prosecution is accusing him of bias. The prosecution is going after him because he testified to very important details. One, that Kyle Rittenhouse attempted to de-escalate violence and aggression, and at one point succeeded. Now, the narrative the prosecution is trying to put forward is intentional homicide. That's the murder charge, more than one, against Kyle Rittenhouse, that he intended to go there and kill people. But with all the testimony we've seen, and now with the testimony of Drew Hernandez, we now know beyond a reasonable doubt that Kyle Rittenhouse was trying to prevent violence. Very, very bad for the state's case, who then begins trying to mischaracterize what happened in Kenosha and begins accusing Drew Hernandez of political bias. The judge intervenes and says, this is not a political trial. This is a fact witness who watched what happened. And the prosecution is trying to claim that because Drew Hernandez doesn't like rioters, he's biased. That's how bad things are going for the prosecution, which brings me to the news we're seeing now. Earlier today, in a previous segment, you'll hear this on the podcast in a minute, Black Lives Matter in New York has threatened directly to riot and stated there will be bloodshed if the police reinstitute their anti-crime unit, plainclothes officers who seek to stop crime. I think it is fair to say when the sentiment from Black Lives Matter is you give us what we want or else, an acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse will result in very serious violence. Now, we don't know for sure. It's winter, okay? Well, it's not winter, it's fall, but it's getting cold. And people don't like going out in the cold, so maybe they won't riot. The police certainly think they will. They're now pulling in more officers in expectation of an acquittal. And I think as more and more people on the left say an acquittal is coming, seems ever likely it will be happening. But let me go through all this and break it down for you. Where the mainstream media and the left have begun to accept they were wrong the whole time, you can no longer push the lies because people can watch the criminal trial for themselves. Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense. A tragic moment, shouldn't have happened, but he should not be going to prison. Let's start with the first story. Before we do, head over to timcast.com and become a member. In order to get access to exclusive members-only segments from the various shows we have, notably the Timcast IRL podcast, a massive library of conversations with many political commentators and personalities you're familiar with. As a member, you're helping support our journalists, and we are expanding and hiring more journalists, as well as putting a lot of these resources into nonprofits to fact-check the mainstream media. That's what we're building. So with your membership, we are expanding, protecting freedom, expanding people's access to technology to prevent censorship, and calling out the lies in the mainstream media. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this video right now with your friends, because even if you disagree, even if you think Kyle Rittenhouse should be acquitted, I think it's important everybody know that the police are preparing for mass unrest. The Daily Mail reports Chicago police cancels officers' days off in preparation for civil unrest over Kyle Rittenhouse trial as America braces for an acquittal. CPD has canceled officers' days off this weekend. It's saying the same thing as the title, so we'll move on. Rittenhouse, 18, is on trial for murdering 2 white Black Lives Matter protesters in Kenosha. I want to stop right there and just issue my personal analysis. I do not believe it is fair to say that the people that lost their lives were Black Lives Matter protesters. And I think the right might disagree with that. One of the individuals in question, Joseph Rosenbaum, had just gotten out of jail for very serious crimes against children. I don't believe he knew anything about the protest movement for the most part. I think he had literally gotten out of jail. I believe that morning he was still carrying his jail bag. He had been sentenced to 15 years for crimes against children. I believe that he likely just, he showed up. I don't think he was an ideologically driven individual. I think he was just a criminal individual. Now, as for one of the other individuals, Gage Grosskreutz, fair to say he was a revolutionary and supporter of Black Lives Matter. They go on to say the teenage gunman claims he was defending his hometown from an angry mob. False. He stated that he was there to provide medical assistance to the protesters and rioters themselves, try and prevent damage, but that his actions were in defense of his life. Closing arguments are expected next week, but the case has already been thrown into chaos. Rittenhouse's lawyers have asked for a mistrial, with prejudice, I might add, because prosecutors introduced banned evidence. Some legal experts have now suggested it was a deliberate move to throw the trial as their chances of convicting grew narrower. Court is now back in session, but the heat surrounding the case is increasing. Early this morning, the judge revealed that the court has been inundated with communications from members of the public, including offensive emails. The judge was branded a racist in some of them, and attorneys on both sides have been targeted. Chicago PD sent a memo to officers this week notifying them that one of their days off this weekend had been canceled, claiming it was due to current crime patterns in the city. Fraternal Order of Police President John Catanzara claims it is in anticipation of upheaval from the Rittenhouse trial. He said in a video posted on YouTube on Monday, he fumed at the canceled time off and said, "They do not get to keep saying we need manpower just in case a verdict doesn't go positive. And all of a sudden there's upheaval." The police department is now refusing to confirm or deny his claims, or whether they anticipate uprising this weekend or next week. All they will say is, quote, "To enhance public safety and to address current crime patterns, all full-duty sworn members will have one regular day off canceled this upcoming weekend between November 12th and through November 14th. I think it's fairly obvious. These days are specific. Coming up this weekend, the potential for riots escalate dramatically. The prosecution has failed. Now, they may still get Kyle Rittenhouse on some lesser charges. He's charged with intentional homicide. Perhaps the jury comes back with manslaughter. It's starting to look like a full acquittal across the board. There's still the question of underage possession of a firearm, but I do have a legal analysis to go through there where Rittenhouse may actually get that charge dismissed as well. Well, maybe not, maybe dismissed, but he may be found not guilty. However, it looks very likely he will be convicted on the misdemeanor charge. That being said, everyone expects unrest. Let me show you a little bit what's going on with the prosecution first to show you how miserable their performance is and why people have woken up to the fact that an acquittal is extremely likely. In this clip from the Washington Free Beacon, Drew Hernandez, he's been on the show several times, he's a reporter and political commentator, was providing testimony. They say, the prosecutor says Hernandez's footage is very slanted against the people who are rioting. Let me play the clip for you.
Videos that you have captured of these incidents that you call riots, they're very slanted against the people who are rioting. You characterize them as Antifa, Black Lives Matter rioters, correct?
Because they are rioting in the footage, yes, absolutely.
Trying to accuse a fact witness who provided video evidence from that night of bias because he films people who are Antifa, who are Black Lives Matter, who are rioting. This is absolute desperation that escalates in one of the craziest moments. In a clip from Mercado Law's live stream, and with a comment from Lauren Southern, she says, when you have absolutely nothing to discredit the witness, so you start attacking them for getting a lawyer, Judge Smackdown is incredible. Let me play for you the clip.
What you just saw was your editing of them together.
You guys asked for my footage, so I gave it to you.
I'm going to pause real quick. The prosecutor asked Drew Hernandez what the footage, what footage was being shown, how was it filmed? Drew was filming with a body cam on his chest and a cell phone. The prosecutor said, what footage was that? Both, replied Drew Hernandez. There was some stupid argument back and forth trying to explain what it was, but ultimately what Drew Hernandez said was, this video clip contains the body cam footage and then the cell phone footage. The prosecution accused them of altering or editing the video in one of the most insane arguments ever. Knowing that this wasn't going anywhere, trying to accuse someone of splicing video simply because it's two different videos playing concurrently, not manipulation in any way, he changes his question to go after Drew Hernandez simply for having a lawyer. Check this out.
Yes.
That's an attorney that you have out of Madison?
How much does he charge?
What's the relevance of this?
Your Honor, we've had a lot of questions about other
What's the
people.
relevance of this?
I would like to know why he felt the need to retain an attorney to provide video in this case.
An insane question from the prosecution. This is gross. Look, the prosecutorial misconduct is just appalling. Let's break it down. Introducing banned evidence, the judge screamed at him. Questioning Kyle Rittenhouse's right to remain silent, the judge yelled at him. And now he is questioning why a witness retains a lawyer, completely immaterial to anything having to do with this case. They're trying to accuse bias because someone had a lawyer send footage. It's quite simple. Why did you retain a lawyer, sir? I'm busy. I don't want to deal with answering your phone calls all day and night. In fact, Drew Hernandez testified when the detectives in the case contacted him requesting footage from that night, he was busy with work and unable to reply. It was only later on he was able to get an attorney to help him deliver the footage to the state and the defense. The defense was not given this footage before anybody else. It was at the same time. I'll put it very, very simply for the state to answer their desperate questions. In the initial request for footage, Drew Hernandez said, I was traveling and covering other stories and didn't have the time to respond. So why hire an attorney? So they can handle it for you. That's normal. The prosecution is spiraling out of control and everyone knows it. And it got worse. Rakeda tweeted, Binger, the prosecutor, is now arguing that hiring a lawyer to help you submit evidence to the state is evidence of bias. Binger does not respect the Constitution. Rakeda previously tweeted, Binger just admitted this is a political trial like an effing moron. Binger said that he was challenging the witness having a lawyer because he's trying to introduce political bias. The judge responds, this is not a political trial. And it's an absurd line of questioning. If you have a witness on the stand who says, here's what I saw under oath, then your accusation of bias is nothing. It is pointless. It is immaterial. Are you going to accuse Gage Grosskreutz of being biased? I mean, personally and out of trial, I will. The defense didn't. Now, of course, the defense said, you, Grosskreutz, raised your fist and said, long live the revolution. You're affiliated with these groups. There's a big difference between someone actively participating in a political action who's saying, long live the revolution, and a journalist who retains a lawyer. You can see the dirty games the prosecution is trying to play. But the media is also trying to play dirty games. From Breitbart, CBS News deletes post declaring Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer before trials end. You see what the media does? Take a look at this tweet. CBS Mornings tweeted, Kyle Rittenhouse testified in his murder trial yesterday, breaking down in tears as he told the jury he murdered 2 men at a Black Lives Matter protest last year in self-defense. He never said he murdered anybody. He explicitly said he wanted to help people. He didn't want to hurt anybody. He explicitly said he did not want to kill anybody. He explicitly stated he only fired until the threat presented before him was no more. When he was asked about Rosenbaum firing 4 shots, the prosecution tried to make it seem like it was an extended period of time where Rittenhouse was firing his gun. The prosecution asked him, you shot Rosenbaum? He's like, yes. And then after he was shot, you fired on him again. He was trying to make it seem like Rittenhouse shot the guy and then waited a second and then shot him again. The defense rebutted this masterfully, having an expert witness come in with video footage and show that 4 shots were fired in approximately 3/4 of 1 second. That is to say, in less than 1 second, Kyle Rittenhouse fired 4 shots. It's quite simple why he did. I'm not happy any of it happened, and I think it's fair to point that out. But when someone is charging at you with their hand on your weapon, you don't know if any of those rounds will hit them, in which I think it is important to state, the defense should. They should mention this to the jury. When it came to Anthony Huber and Gage Grosskreutz, a single round is no guarantee to neutralize the target. It shows that Kyle Rittenhouse's intention was to neutralize and minimize. In the case of Joseph Rosenbaum, who directly threatened his life and grabbed his weapon, Rittenhouse fired 4 times because he was trying to neutralize the threat. When he ran from the scene and was attacked by other people, he fired 2 shots at one person, then 1 shot and 1 shot. That says to me that he was trying to minimize the amount of damage. The prosecution said to him, you wanted to kill those people. Rittenhouse said no. He said, but you shot them with a gun. Don't you think that would happen? The answer is no. People think life is a movie where somebody gets punched one time and then they're unconscious. Watch videos of police confrontations. One famous video went viral where an officer fires upon a man who's attacking him, I believe, with a knife, and the man keeps running at him. Because shooting someone is no guarantee the threat will be neutralized. And we don't want people getting shot. We don't want anyone getting hurt. It's sad always because life is precious, even when they're bad people. I oppose the death penalty. But I believe Kyle Rittenhouse was just scared for his life. This man threatened him. Kyle Rittenhouse fled, as Drew Hernandez has now added to the testimony, watching it happen. Drew Hernandez also testified Rosenbaum was trying to start fights. Now, the state objected, saying speculative. But Hernandez said he was screaming, shoot me. And that was allowed. The media has tried to play dirty games, but now it has become undeniable. Of course, many of you may have already seen the story because we've covered it several times. Anna Kasparian, co-host of The Young Turks, shockingly revealed she was wrong about key facts concerning the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. I absolutely respect her coming out and saying she was wrong, 100%. And that's all I'll say on the matter. We can disagree politically, but this is the right thing to do, and I respect it. Now I give you Chris Hayes. This clip is very important. Let me play it for you.
There's a legal question before the jury right now of Kyle Rittenhouse's guilt or innocence. It's being determined, will be determined. From what I've seen, I think it's pretty likely he'll be acquitted, honestly.
From what I've seen, it is very likely he will be acquitted, honestly. Chris Hayes, MSNBC, and all these networks that lied, that pushed propaganda, now being forced to accept this is reality. Chris Hayes, of course, will not just walk away from this. He'll shift the argument, saying, quote, do we want a society in which political conflict is settled on the streets between people with guns? One in which everyone is armed and can therefore view the other people armed as a plausible threat? Is that the society we want? The answer is no. Of course not. But Chris, when you get facts wrong and you defend violent extremists who are burning down cities, and then you criticize the police and the police stop protecting the community, what did you think was going to happen? People like Kyle Rittenhouse, they will show up and they will say something must be done. The leftists heavily criticized Kyle Rittenhouse, saying he wanted to play police officer. Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I really do. Kyle Rittenhouse wanted to be a cop. He wanted to be an EMT. He showed up with a weapon. He showed up with a first aid kit. Why did he have a weapon? I mean, for defense. That's why you're allowed to keep and bear arms, period. And they shouldn't be able to question your constitutional right to keep and bear arms. In fact, if someone said, why were you carrying a weapon? Because it's my right. Then you can ask me why I defended myself. Now, that's a specific question that should be answered. But Kyle Rittenhouse, I think he did want to play cop. Why? Because the police stood down. Everywhere across this country, we watched it happen in New York, in Chicago, in Kenosha. We watched a video of a man get bashed over the back of the skull by these extremists. And I still think Kyle Rittenhouse should not have gone out there. I think this was a political question, and watching these riots unfold, they needed to be stopped, but they needed to be stopped by police. And this would have required citizens of good conscience to stand up and demand of their leaders put an end to it. But you see, the issue is people don't stand up. They wouldn't speak out. They were scared. They thought to themselves, as Black Lives Matter and Antifa riot, and they go door to door, banging on doors. If I keep my head down, they'll skip over my door. If I put the sign in the window, they'll skip over my window. And then what happens is the police say we have no support from the community, so we will not intervene. No, what needed to happen was the people of Kenosha needed to rise up together, peacefully, and come out on the streets and say, we condemn this no more. They didn't. They stayed in their homes. They did nothing. In fact, when it came to some of these businesses, they just told people to go out there with weapons. I understand why Kyle Rittenhouse and these other individuals did. I absolutely understand why they did. I don't fault them for doing it because I understand the circumstances, but I will criticize the action of doing it. And it's difficult because people may have lost their lives to a greater degree that day were it not for people putting out fires. They were trying to push a flaming dumpster into the street, but they were pushing it towards a gas station. And there have been witnesses who said they were trying to push it towards the gas station. I'm not sure if I would go that far, but they were pushing it in that direction. And it may have been Kyle Rittenhouse, but one of the people in this group put that fire out. I'm not going to pretend to be the arbiter of morality. I understand why they went out there. I wish they didn't. Maybe it would have been worse. I honestly don't know. And that's the challenge in saying I would have preferred something else. Perhaps it's ignorant and naive of me to say they shouldn't have been there because what if these people killed others? As we had seen. I believe the total is 32 dead in the George Floyd riots. I want to show you this tweet. Sorry, not this one. Here we go. Martyr Made. I'm not sure who exactly this Twitter account is. Just 100,000 followers. Martyr Made podcast says, it's easy to shake your head at these people, but this is entirely the result of the press being unsalvageable demons. A woman named Sarah Beth Berwick tweeted, I am highly educated and reasonably perceptive, and it was only today that I learned that Kyle Rittenhouse's victims were white. My progressive bubble made this seem like a very different case than it is. Well, I don't believe it's fair to say the people who were shot by Kyle Rittenhouse were victims. I believe they were perpetrators of crime. The first individual, Rosenbaum, was a convicted felon who committed several atrocities against children, who threatened the life of Kyle Rittenhouse and others, which is already a crime, and then committed assault and battery against him. Both. I don't know about Wisconsin law, but in Illinois, assault is putting someone in reasonable fear of harm, and battery is when you make contact. Spitting on someone is battery. In this instance, Rosenbaum grabbed Rittenhouse's gun. Battery. Threatened his life. Assault. Potentially aggravated. Maybe they could argue it wasn't, but I'd say the moment he grabbed that gun, it was an aggravated assault. Rittenhouse then fired on this man. Anthony Huber. This one's interesting. He was a convicted criminal, but I genuinely believe he thought he was stopping someone doing something wrong. I really do. But the problem is your belief about what happening is immaterial to self-defense. Gage Grosskreutz. Now, his testimony was very different. He testified he believed Rittenhouse was working with the police, or at least that Rittenhouse claimed he was. It's not true. Rittenhouse never said that. But that's what he believed. Gage Grosskreutz, armed with a weapon he was not legally allowed to be possessing, illegally concealed, not knowing what happened, and believing that Kyle Rittenhouse was working with police by Rittenhouse's own statement, advanced on him with a gun in his hand. That was overtly criminal. But Rittenhouse was still entitled to defend himself against everyone. In response to this tweet, where this woman said, my progressive bubble made it seem like a very different case. One person said, oh my, I did not know this. Another said, I assumed the same. And another said, I was pretty shocked to learn many of the details over the past couple of weeks too. Once I watched all the video footage and learned some other details, I was like, and then he puts a shocked emoji. I was also at the time in a progressive bubble. I've changed a lot since then, and I'm grateful for that. It's a fact that the person who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse committed serious, aggressive crimes against children. The jury isn't allowed to know that. And I think it's the right call on the judge's part. I think in the bigger picture, a lot of people would be biased against this individual, but the question here is whether or not self-defense occurred. In the end, there actually is one question that needs to be answered, and that's the gun charge. If there is a mistrial with prejudice, that is the best outcome for the defense. Kyle Rittenhouse cannot be charged again. All of the charges are dismissed. But the judge hasn't moved in that direction, so we don't know exactly how this will play out. As I'm recording this, of course, the trial is still ongoing and new details are emerging, but it seems like the trial won't be over until at least Monday or Tuesday, potentially Monday. That's what the judge said the other day. The judge may still rule on the motion for a mistrial with prejudice because it seems that the prosecutor is almost trying to make it happen. I wonder if the prosecutor is ideologically driven and knows that the best outcome for the extremists is a mistrial with prejudice. Then he can claim that justice was not served and the judge was biased. The media has already made those claims. The prosecutor violated the constitutional rights of Kyle Rittenhouse. The judge called it a grave constitutional violation. In fact, today, the judge reprimanded the prosecution again, saying, yesterday you were admonished over the Constitution, not law. The prosecution tried introducing evidence that had been barred from the trial, and the judge yelled at him for it. And today, the prosecution is trying to strike at the credibility of a fact witness with video footage because he's a lawyer. People have a right to retain counsel. It is a basic right in this country. It is a right to retain counsel. No one should be questioned simply because they have a lawyer. To imply guilt or a lack of credibility simply because you asked for legal advice is insane. Now, in this instance, Drew Hernandez is not on trial himself. And the judge said, I think I'll allow it, but I'll be watching closely. I'm surprised the judge has allowed what he has. And I believe at this point, the judge, he really should declare a mistrial with prejudice. But it would be the best outcome that a jury comes back and says not guilty on all counts. The gun charge may remain. Legal Insurrection's Andrew Branca, who I think has the best commentary across the board on this. He's a self-defense legal expert. We've had him on the show before. He points out that there is an exception to the gun charge. And he says in the statute, section 3C is interesting. Let me see if I can, here we go. He says the entire legal analysis would include the relevant part, 3C. It says this section applies only to a person under 18 years of age who possesses or is armed with a rifle or shotgun if the person is not in compliance with SS 29304 and 29593. So unless Kyle is not in compliance with those provisions, the 948.60 gun possession statute would seem not to apply to him at all. That is, he would be legally exempt from the provisions of 948.6 entirely. Basically, these two other provisions both must be not in compliance to simplify. One of the exceptions specifically states that a person must be under the age of 16. It says, if we take a closer look at 29304, we see that it also is a hunting-related statute, but one that involves restrictions on hunting and use of firearms by persons under 16 years of age. What that means is many people believe that this could be interpreted by the judge, because it would have to be the judge, that the law about underage of the weapon was modified to state that it is only applicable to those under the age of 16. That means when they say under 18, they may be saying minors with the exception of 16 to 17-year-olds. It actually makes sense to frame the law this way. Otherwise, what they'd have to do is write the law and say, this law applies to everybody who is underage, specifically the ages of 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. No, it makes sense to say people under the age of 18 except 16 and 17. The 2 years you're exempted from this. And it may be simply because when they passed the law, they later amended it, or when the law was going through committee before it was passed, someone said, hey, well, come on, 16 and 17-year-olds go hunting with their parents and can bear rifles. To put it simply, it would seem the law in Wisconsin is you can't have a handgun unless you're over 18. You can't have a rifle unless you're at least 16 or 17. Though there's a question about the legality there. It's a matter for the judge. A mistrial with prejudice is the best outcome. It's also politically one of the worst outcomes. We'll see how this plays out. Right now, as I'm recording this, Drew Hernandez is continuing his testimony. We'll see what dirty games the prosecution wants to play. But I'll put it this way. I don't believe Drew Hernandez is biased against rioters and vandals and Black Lives Matter and Antifa. I think he's just telling the truth. And I think the problem is the media lies so much, the truth sounds biased. They accuse me of being biased because I tell the truth. It's that simple. When I investigated Russiagate and Ukrainegate, and I told the truth. They accuse me of bias for just being honest. Now, I'm wrong sometimes. But even when you recognize the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, saying she was wrong, I've been right the whole time. I've told the truth the whole time. Donald Trump pinned a tweet from me on his Twitter account when he had it last year, where I said that the Kyle Rittenhouse case convinced me to vote for Trump because I saw the depravity and the evil in the system that need to be resisted. And it was extreme at that point. And the media and the left, using the lies of this case that they've put out, tried to make it seem like I was saying that it was a good thing or something, that a white supremacist was targeting black people. Those are the lies they played. Now these people are waking up. What I was saying was that this young kid who should not have been there, and I said that, was attacked by extremists and defended himself. And when the media lied to try and destroy people's lives, I realized that we really do need a counter movement, Donald Trump or otherwise, to stop the evil. And Trump is a terrible avatar for this. But he had policies that I thought were important, notably banning critical race theory in the federal level and trainings and things like that. Now we know the truth. But for many on the left, it doesn't matter. The cult doesn't care. They want to see the system burn, and so they'll riot. Maybe not. I don't know. But the police certainly expect it, so I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Join us for the live show, and I'll see you all there.